Heart Midwives is all about why midwifery matters. So if you're pregnant, looking to become pregnant, postpartum, someone with a uterus, or even care about someone with a uterus, then these conversations are going to be relevant to your life. Hi, I'm Cheryl Furer. I'm a practicing midwife, certified homeopath, educator, and health coach. I believe deeply in the midwife's model of care, where pregnant women and people are fully listened to. Their provider gets to know them as a person beyond numbers on a chart, a place where continuity of care is a normal part of pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. Today we have on our episode Lisa with the hospital doulas. Lisa, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
I would love to. Thank you so much for having me. My name's Lisa Collins. I am the co-founder of the Hospital Doulas and Associates. We're a birth doula agency, in-person and virtual births, and also primarily right now, kind of global childbirth education for preparing people for their hospital birth. I'm also an official evidence-based birth instructor, and I've been so for several years, and I love bringing that to my work.
That's so lovely. So I'd love to start with the question about the theme of the series, which is, why do you love midwifery?
I love the name of your podcast, I Love Midwives, because that's what I think of when I think of midwives. Honestly, why I am where I am today because of a midwife, first of all, and I really wanted to become a doula, and I couldn't imagine how to become one. I was kind of a type A person, like back over a decade ago. There were no programs or like do this and in a year you'll be a doula. So that I befriended a midwife, and she invited me into her home, into her garden, took the time and space just to sit with me and said, and looked me in the eye and said, "You are a doula. Like you either are or you aren't, you're not. And you have that thing. I can already feel it." And I was like, "Really?" And that got me into doing it. And she said, "Just keep showing up to she'd have monthly meetings at her house with doulas and midwives." And I went for a whole year without getting my first birth.
Wow.
They would even have me at this meeting when I had had my own 3 children, but I'd never attended a birth. And just her time and patience got me started in this journey. And so that was my beginnings with midwifery, is that I loved her.
Oh my goodness, that's such a lovely story. And you must have gained so much wisdom sitting in on those gatherings for a whole year.
Everyone was so generous with their knowledge. I had never been in an industry like that before, where there was a sisterhood. I loved it. And eventually one of them said, "Hey, I have a short-term notice birth. Would you like to be the primary doula?" And the rest is history.
That's so great. I think that that's really demonstrative of how midwifery is very community based. Even, a lot of midwives are private practices. They're sole entrepreneurship. They have their own private practice. And yet we still have to have community in all different ways. We need it. And so this story about how the community like folded you in and then eventually started inviting you to births, it's just such a lovely demonstration of midwifery in general.
Absolutely.
So do you have a story of when you saw midwifery in action?
I have to say, I specialized in hospital births pretty early on. So my first births were seeing like a very medicalized managed care. When it came time to pushing, it was like, oh my, like an emergency, and everyone's running and hold your breath and accounting. And that's all I knew. That's what my births were 20 and 30 years ago. So that's all I knew. But then that same midwife, I was at a birth of hers in the hospital, and they're like, "Oh, I heard she came in so casual, like, oh, I hear you're complete. Wow. Like, let's see if we can get some pushing going," just kind of like sat with her hand there and like, you feel like giving it a try? Yeah, try one. Like, and was just making conversation in between. Before you knew it, like she was really pushing quite naturally. And there was no emergency. She took all the time in the world. I couldn't believe it. Even as like the baby was crowning and stuff, she was just still, we just waited. There was that hands-off approach. I'd never seen that before, where they weren't all like, in there. I was like, wow. And it had a good vantage point of view of just seeing the baby, just like the pregnant stretch and accommodate and a little bit more and accommodate. And I was like, what? No tearing, no, just so calm. And when the baby came out, it was just like put baby on chest, and there wasn't just no emergency feeling. And it was just a completely different experience. And that's really what got me started in this, like thinking of like best of both worlds. Like, how can I bring the best experience of like midwifery and home and birth center birth to the hospital?
Was
And she
that
taught me
birth
that.
at the hospital or was it at
Yes,
home?
that was my first birth at a hospital with this midwife.
Oh, that's
So
great. Yeah.
I had only done hospital births with OBs before then, so I didn't know it could be that way in the hospital with the right provider.
Gosh.
So it was
Wow.
amazing. I couldn't believe it. And it just, the whole room felt magical, and like the nurses were under her spell, and it was just like there was this room. I have chills just thinking about it. There was just this room for what sacred was happening there. You know.
Isn't that, wow, that's really beautiful. I'd love to ask you more of that. And I feel like it's more of a feeling
Yeah, it's hard to explain.
than something that can be put into words. But I do feel that midwives bring that kind of sacredness into the birthing space, regardless of where it happens. You know, it's something about like slowing time down.
Yes.
And I know that probably sounds...
that's the feeling that I had. And even remembering it, it was like slow motion at a time where it's usually like, ooh, like quite the opposite with an OB in the hospital.
Yeah. Have you, thinking kind of back to your experiences with midwives and, you know, this hospital midwife that really like brought you into the fold, and then going to these birth experiences with them. Are there any life lessons that you have like discovered through your work, or even just as a birth worker, that kind of show up in other areas in your life?
I think like one of the life lessons I learned the most was like reading the room.
Wow.
Like she would come in wherever she was with whoever she was with. It didn't have to be just a patient or client in birth. And just to take a breath, where is this person at? Do they look worried? Do they look happy? Do they look excited? And like joining them where they're at. And like, even if she had a concern to bring to the table, she did it in a way that was very gentle. Like if that person wasn't in a worried state, so just like kind of meeting people where they're at. I noticed that the nurses in the hospital could really use this lesson. I'm really thinking of offering some in services in the hospital for just that simple reading the room could do so much, because they rush in with their agenda. And I understand they have a huge responsibility. They have a lot of things to accomplish, but more than that, just like, it's like they bring their personality, and that's the same every time they walk into the room, whoever they are. But just, if you just took a second to look at the birthing individual and the partner and see where are they at, like the story, you know how there's excitement, and then there's worry, and then there's fear, and then there's I can't do this, like seeing where are they, like do they want to be quiet, do they want to talk, do they want to have jokes, and just bringing that to them. And I've really learned to do that in all areas of my life now. And just allowing that space, because people will usually tell you, if you give them just a little bit of space, they'll say where they're at or what's bothering them, if you don't rush in with your agenda immediately. And that has just talk about slowing down time. I mean, I do that whether I'm talking to the checkout lady at the grocery store, and people just, they just say, oh, you make me feel so calm just being around you. And I'm not doing anything. I'm just allowing them to be in their moment and responding to it. That's all. Mm-hmm. I used to worry about, like, when I was a new doula, with my prenatal handouts and how do I talk about it, what my materials, this and that. And the midwife would say, just listen. Like, they may have one thing that they're so worried about. Give them the opportunity to talk about, I am so worried about tearing, or I'm so worried about pooping, or I'm worried my husband or my partner cannot deal with this. But how am I going to get support if I know they can't like, they have the one thing on their mind. Let them talk about it and address that first. There's always time for handouts.
I love that perspective. Yes. And yeah, it's just very, I get that all the time too. You're very soothing, you're very
Mhm.
calm. And I'm like, well, I'm also just it in the midwife world, sometimes we call it holding space, or in the birth
Right,
world, I
right,
think,
right, right.
doulas and midwives, we call it holding space. And
It's
it's
so
really,
elusive.
I know, what does that mean anyway? But it really is just about slowing down enough to actually like listen and see the other person and really get the opportunity to hear them. And it's just those moments where, especially in a prenatal appointment or a postpartum appointment during labor,
Mm.
if you can just, you have your agenda, yeah, as the provider, like I have my agenda
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
as a doula, as,
mm-hmm,
childbirth educator, we all have our agendas.
mm-hmm.
And, the birthing
And
person is responsible for their body. They've got their stuff that's going on. And so that opportunity to just pause and slow down with them, slow time down, listen to them fully, let them complete their experience, and just taking that opportunity, it can have such an added value to the
mm-hmm,
childbearing year, in all
mm-hmm,
honesty.
mm-hmm. There was a listening to mother survey to talk about what birth satisfaction really came down to. And it wasn't about how long the labor was. It wasn't about how much pain they perceived they were in. It was if they felt listened to.
Wow,
And
how
that's so
powerful is that?
easy to do. Like nurses, with all they have to do, if we could really help people just feel listened to, even if you can't change what's happening, but just that they felt listened to makes all the difference in the world and is what actually makes people satisfied. So that doesn't cost a thing.
Well, I'll pull out my soapbox for a half a second.
Okay.
And but it does, because insurance,
Okay.
when you're running your pricing through insurance, which most people are
Mm-hmm.
using health insurance or Medicaid,
Mm-hmm.
or they're using some kind of plan to choose their birthing professional and then also to support them during birth.
Right.
And insurance makes you justify, every, I think it's 15 minutes if I remember the
Mm-hmm.
codes correctly. So if you spend
Mm-hmm.
more than the first 5 to 10 minutes with somebody, you better have a good reason as to why.
Wow.
But a lot of times, the first 5 to 10 minutes of appointments for myself as a practicing midwife, we're just
Mm-hmm.
settling in a lot of times.
Right.
Like, I'm not trying to rush our conversation. I actually want to hear, like, how is their day
Mm-hmm.
going? How are they responding to, whatever's going on in their life? Like, what's
Mm-hmm.
actually happening for them right now? And I do that not just to build the connection, but also because there's the piece around, there might be things that somebody says that sort of makes me more curious or want to explore that conversation even more with them. And,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I'm hearing something about an upcoming trip. And so I'd like to talk to them more about preparing for that, or tips to stay healthy
Mm-hmm.
on their trip. Or maybe I'm hearing something about some signs and symptoms of anxiety or depression. And so maybe I want to address that. Or even some physical or health related things that I'm sort of like, huh, it like perks my interest.
Mm-hmm.
And in the insurance world of care providing,
Mm-hmm.
because I will put it on the system. I know that doctors and nurses did not get into their professions to rush through appointments and to never
Right. I
like
know.
have connection with their clients. Like, that's not,
Mm-hmm.
it's not what they want.
No one likes it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's how our system is set up. And
Yeah.
so um, when you have a system like that, first you see the medical assistant, then maybe you see the nurse, then maybe you see the OB for your prenatal. You may have met any of these people, you may not have. And that doesn't give you the opportunity, or the provider the opportunity, to actually maybe pick up on
Right.
signs and symptoms that might indicate something else going on in your life or
Mm-hmm.
indicate something else going on in your health. And I get it, like checklists and stuff are useful, but that's like all they have to go on. And to me, I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, I have checklists, but honestly, my checklists are more of like a weeding. I don't just
Mm-hmm.
bam, 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 ask the question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you've been with clients when they're getting triaged into the hospital. And I call it like the Dalmatian questions because it's like 101 questions.
It's
I'm like, they can be pre-registered. They can
oh
be
yeah,
like ready.
yeah,
They're like, I am literally, this is my hospital. This is my provider.
yeah.
Like, I'm ready to go. And as soon as they come in, they're like, do you have a
What
car seat
medications
installed?
are you on?
Yeah. What
Have you ever
medication?
had the chicken pox? So I prepare my clients for that too, and hopefully for the partner, if the birthing person is really in the middle of contractions and stuff, that the partner could just be like, yes, no, like just do it for them if possible, so that the birthing person can stay in their zone. But it's usually a surprise. Like, I pre-registered. Why are you asking me all these things?
Yeah. Yeah. And I get it. Again, like I understand their perspective. They kind of
Right,
need to
right.
have like a fresh look at this new
Hmm.
person in front of them.
And then they go up to L&D and it's the same thing again.
Oh my God.
And this time they're like, get in the bed. We need a strip, blah, blah, blah. We need to start the IV. And it's so hard. It's funny. Like, I've obviously done a lot of home birth and birth center births in my early career. And it's really hard to do hospital births and to hold that space and feel honestly traumatized over and over again. But my business partner, Marnie Lee, and I started the hospital doulas because we really believe that those people need it the most. They need the support the most.
Definitely. Yeah. And it's
So,
because of the system that's set up. Again,
right.
I'm 100% sure that most, if not all, nurses would rather
Of course.
settle
Of
in,
course.
hold that space, listen to their client,
Hmm.
not be running in and out of the room,
Hmm.
watching the monitors at the desk, not sure where they're going to
Yes.
go, what they're going to do. Like, I'm
Hmm.
sure that they would rather have that experience. I'm sure the OBs would rather like talk and listen to their clients a little bit more, but that's not built of that model of care. It's just
No,
bam, 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 get
no.
them in, get them out.
Yeah.
And so, like, our whole conversation around holding space, deeply listening, being able to observe someone, and just, how did you put it again? Being able to read the room.
Mm.
Like, what a gift that you got from that midwife.
That
And like you
midwife.
say, like, we can take it all over our experience. Just
Hmm.
it's not just a birthing experience. You walk
Hmm.
into a party, you walk into a
Hmm.
fight with your kids, you
Yep,
walk into,
exactly.
you know, um,
Yeah. And patience. She taught me patience too. When I would go to home births with her and she would just be knitting and I'm like, what are we doing? What are we doing next? Should we do and she just and again read the room. She would know when, yes, this woman, did want 10 people here for this occasion and it's all decorated and everything, but right now she needs everyone to leave. To get out of the
yeah,
room and give her some time to regroup. Like, if she would just really know she taught me that too, that like they'll usually kind of show you what they need and then you kind of help make it happen. You know, we have like code words and stuff for when people would like their mother-in-law to leave and things like that. Because they kind of predict there may come a time where it's just, you may think that you want all these people here, but there comes some time where you just really need some time and space to yourself and your partner. And even myself, that I will leave and give them some time.
definitely. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's again such a gift to be able to even ask, do you and your
Hmm.
partner just want some alone time right now?
Hmm.
Yeah, that's so nice. Like, maybe they do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, well, is there anything else you'd love to share about like how midwifery has impacted you in your life, or another story you'd like to share about midwives and the impact you've had with them?
Oh my goodness. I can't think of any right offhand, but I mean, I just have them to thank for where I am in my life and what my mission to bring positive systemic change to hospital births for everyone everywhere. Like, I know it's possible. I've seen it, and I'm not going to stop until we get there, one couple at a time.
That's so wonderful. So why don't you go ahead and share where people can find you?
You can find us at thehospitaldoulascircle.com. And there's a great thing on our website there. If you join our circle, I have a really cool interactive fillable PDF with over 100 birth options and considerations that you can rank in priority. There's a column for you, there's a column for your partner. So right away, you can kind of make sure you're on the same page, or you could just write a question mark if you don't even know what that is, so that you know ahead of time what all the different things are, so you can be an educated consumer when you get in there and be prepared. And then when you get in there, even if you don't know a lot about everything, just know about the BRAIN acronym, like what are the benefits? What are the risks? What are the alternatives? What are my instincts saying? What if we do nothing right now? Like, that's all you really need to know about, just slow things down. Yeah. And I hope we have a great 2-session masterclass, a Zoom masterclass for everything you need to navigate your hospital birth, and then a condensed 1-session insider secrets from the hospital doulas. Because we love all the great childbirth preps that are out there. I love them. We recommend them all the time. Hypnobirthing, gentle birth, all your stuff, everyone's. But we really are seeing, like, unless you're prepared for what you're going to get in the hospital and what's going to be offered to you, and what routine care looks like, what the evidence says, what your rights are, like, that all goes right out the window if you're not prepared. It's like we always say, it's like if you're going to go travel to a foreign country, like all these great, very capable couples would do all kinds of research, right? They'd say, what's the language, what's the culture, what are the scams, what do I have to watch out for, what's the transportation, what shots do I need to go before I get there? But yet so many really educated people are like, well, who's going to tell you what really happens in the hospital and what you can do about it to get, like, more of what you want and less of what you don't want. That's all and we have so many people that go through, sometimes they end up with everything, but they're really satisfied because they felt like they had choices and they understood what they were agreeing to at every turn and have no regrets.
That's amazing. I love that downloadable PDF and being able to have your partner and yourself do it, so that, like you said, even if you're not sure what that is, you have an idea of what questions to ask, and you can find that into your programs, or you can ask your providers or your childbirth educators,
and really come up with your top
doula
priorities, because sometimes you don't want to fight every battle, but it kind of becomes clear what's most important to you. And then when you talk to someone like myself, they can tell you how to protect those things, like the things that you want the most.
Oh, I love that so much. So we'll definitely link your link into the comments and where people can find you. Thank you, Lisa, so much for sharing about why you love midwives. I would love, if you love this episode, please do share it to your friends, subscribe for new episodes, and we would love to hear from you why you love midwives in the comments. Thanks.
Thank you so much for having me.